Hello, in this video I'm going to demo using django-functest to write some automated end-to-end tests interactively for a Django project. In particular, we're going to write our tests with a real web browser open in front of us, which is much nicer than writing tests blind, as it were, and trying to guess what might be on the page. Now, everything I'm going to cover is also in the written docs, but it might help you to see it in action. I'm going to use this example project, which is also found in the repo. And to keep things simple, I'm going to write a test for view code that's already been written for us, the Django admin. I want a test that ensures that a super user can use the Django admin to change their own details in the system on a page which looks like this one. Now, we're going to start with the pattern that's described in the docs, where we have two base classes, one for the Selenium tests and one for the web tests, which is here in this file, which I've already created. And I'm also using in this file all of all of the tips for PyTest integration, which are in the django-functest docs. Now, Selenium is very well known. It is a tool that remote controls a real web browser. WebTest is less well known. It's an API for running any Python WSGI app. It functions a bit like a text-only browser. So it doesn't load CSS or run JavaScript or any of those kind of things. It also runs in a single process, single-threaded, without the need for a separate server process. And that makes it very fast and light and deterministic. The django-functest API abstracts over both of them, so you can actually write two tests using these two different backends at the same time. Now I'm going to go and start a new test file. Let's call it testadmin.py. And the first thing I will need is some imports from django-functest library. Let's go, I need funcbase mixin, which provides some editor support, and shortcut login mixin, which means I can log in the background, as it were, without having to navigate an actual login page. Then I need the classes I defined in my base file earlier. Both of those. Now, a class to hold my actual tests. I'm going to call it user admin base, because this is actually going to be an abstract class, in the sense that the tests defined directly in here aren't going to be run. It's the tests as they are defined in the inherited class, in the subclasses, which will actually be run. So that wants the shortcut login as well. And we want test super user can change on details in the admin. Let's put pass for now. We then need two subclasses. We'll call the first one user admin WT web test. That will inherit from my test cases in the base class, and from the web test base, which provides the actual implementation. And then another one, user admin SL Selenium. Now it's the same test cases, but the Selenium backend. We don't actually have to write both of these subclasses. We can, if just one of them is useful to you, that's fine. And there's other patterns around that which are described in the docs. Now I've actually got to write the test. But instead of doing it here in the editor, I'm going to do it from a REPL, a read-eval print loop, and I'm using the IPython REPL, which I can embed in my test like this. I type that very quickly because it's a shortcut in my editor. I use this a lot. It's a really great tool for interactive programming and debugging. Now I need to run the test from a terminal. So let me open up a terminal. Let's put that over to the right-hand side. I also need to activate the virtual env for this example project. I think that's correct. Yes. Okay. Now I'm using PyTest in this project, so I can specify the tests like this. I can test to the file, test admin. I can also use, as described in the PyTest integration tips, I can use the Selenium marker because I want to run the Selenium version of these tests. And I also want to show the browser window, otherwise it will run headless. And finally, I also need to specify -s, which tells PyTest not to capture standard input. Otherwise, the REPL wouldn't work at all. I wouldn't be able to type into it. So let's run that. And you'll see it will open up a browser window for me. Let's put that to that side. And it's opened up an IPython prompt on my terminal. Now, the first thing I need to do actually is, if I'm going to log a user in, I need to create a user, which I haven't done yet. And I've got a test utility for that, which I have not imported. So I can go ahead and import that test.factories, I think. Yeah, import create user. Okay. The nice thing about the REPL is I can use the full power of Python. I can do imports and define classes and methods and functions and all kinds of things if I want to. So I've imported that. I now actually need to use it. So let's go user equals create user, and does it have some help for me here? Yeah, it's super user. I want a super user so that it can actually use the admin. So now I need to actually log in to the admin, and I'm not testing login functionality, so I want a shortcut method. Self here is the test class itself, and that gives me all kinds of test methods. I want the shortcut login method, and that's kind of done a cheating login in the background. Now I need to visit the page, which I can do conveniently with the function called getURL, which django-functest provides. And this has got Django URL reversing built in. So the URL name I need is accounts user change list, which I haven't not memorized. It's found in the Django documentation. So that will load that page. Thankfully, I am logged in. It gave me access. Let's get rid of this sidebar. Don't need that. Now, for every action I take here that I want to be a part of my actual test, I need to write it as a command in the REPL window. But that doesn't mean I can't do other things. I can still interact with this page in the normal way. I can click on things and see what they do. Press the back button if I go to the wrong page, and so on. But now I need to create a command to click on this link. I've decided to start from this point. Can I click on this link and then fill out the form? So let's open up DevTools to expect this link and work out a way in which we can define what link we're talking about. I can use self.followLink to click on it. In terms of the actual CSS selector, this bar down the bottom is quite useful. Let's use result list, body, and A, seeing as we've actually only got one link that's in the body of this table. So we can call it the result list, T body, A. And that worked. It clicked on the link and followed it to the next page. Now I actually want to fill in this form. So let's inspect these controls and see what they are called. The IDs are usually a pretty good bet for filling in a form. ID first name for that one, and ID underscore last name for this one. So the API to use for this is fill, which is a convenience for filling in any form using CSS selectors. ID first name. Let's use my real name. And ID last name there. I'll pass it a dictionary of those keys and values, and it will fill in those controls for me. Now the last thing I need to do now is actually submit this form using this save button down at the bottom. So we've got an input with type submit and the value save. We need to click on the right one. And as it's a form that we're submitting, we use the submit API. And I will use this CSS selector. It can be difficult sometimes to find good, robust selectors, but this is one which will work, and it will be fine for now. So, submitted the form, and it saved it successfully. That was good. Let's do some asserts. Let's do one for the UE. Let's assert that we're on the text contains the success message. Assert text present was changed successfully. Oh, I think I must have had a typo there. I got two L's. That assert failed, was changed successfully. Okay, passed this time. Let's do another test for the DB. We'll have to refresh the object from the database because it's been changed in a separate process, separate thread. So now we can do assert dot first name equals Luke. And that one passed. Okay, so that's the end of the test that I'm going to write. But before I finish my REPL session, I want to copy all of that test, all the correct tests that I wrote. I want to copy them back to my editor. So let's copy all of these. You can also use the history function in the IPython editor to go up and down and find stuff if you spend a longer time in the editor. Let's put that there. Delete that. And let's get this test from the bottom that was successful. This one is wrong. I just need to clean it up a little bit. Let's go F3. Let's move this import up to the top. Get rid of some of these. Weaken this up a bit. Okay, that should be my test complete. Now I want to exit my REPL session. I can do that with Control D. That's the end. Now I actually need to run that test that I've created, but this time I'm going to run not just the Selenium version, but both versions. I don't need these flags anymore. I'm going to have the browser window invisible, but I'll put -v verbose so you can see what's going on. Let's run those. Now you see how both of them passed. You'll have noticed that the first one, the web test went very quickly, almost immediately. And that's because it's not actually having to do a huge amount of work, and it's also running synchronously inside the single PyTest process. The entire Django app, with all its middleware, etc., has been wrapped up into a single Python function. And WebTest can then just call that as a function, simulating the kinds of requests a browser would make, remembering page state and persistent cookies, and so on. The Selenium one naturally takes a little bit longer. It has to spin up a web server in a separate thread. It has to open an actual web browser, invisibly this time, which then has to load the whole HTML and the JavaScript and CSS, etc. I've got to click on all the controls and so on. But the great thing is that django-functest takes care of the low-level details for you most of the time, so such as scrolling to the right place on a page. And you can also then use this same API for writing the fast web tests for really fast and deterministic iteration. Well, I hope that was helpful as an introduction to django-functest and to the really nice flow of using a REPL to write end-to-end tests interactively. Thanks for watching.